Ari let out a short, broken laugh when her phone buzzed, because the reply said, "You should ice it. And next time, text someone who isn't bored." Bored. That word continuously echoed in her mind. The man who answered her emergency text was bored. She pressed the phone closer to her face with a hand, while the other hung on a cast, staring deeply at the screen, searching for a clue, a hint, or perhaps something that meant she wasn't completely alone in the world. Her shaky thumb hovered over the keyboard, and slowly she typed back, "Please, I think he's coming back." 3 dots appeared instantly. Ari pressed herself against the corner of the hallway as she felt the chill of the cold tile pressing into her cheek, and listened. Not for footsteps. She knew those would come eventually, but for the silence that screamed before them. The man she had been living with for the past 3 years, Ryo Yongsson, had always been quiet. He hardly ever yelled, but could make the air feel thick with danger just by existing. She had learned to measure every breath around him, and had learned to calculate the weight of every word. And now, for the first time, she realized that her calculations might have failed. The phone buzzed again, making her flinch. "I can't make promises," the message said, "so don't wait for one." Ari swallowed hard. Her lips were dry and cracking, but she forced a shaky smile at the absurdity. "He's bored and somehow helping me," she thought. "That's insane." She quickly typed back, "Then don't. Just tell me what to do." The reply came faster this time. "Stay still. Don't make any noise. Ice the swelling if you can, and if anyone asks, just tell them a dog did it." Ari blinked, trying not to snort. The absurd text made her heart beat faster. A dog had never bitten her, but that didn't matter. The fact that he joked, even in this situation, made her feel less trapped and more human again. She took a slow breath. The hallway was dim, and shadows curled into corners like ink bleeding across paper. She peeked around, scanning for the familiar outline of Ryo's tall frame. Nothing. So for now she felt safe. "Why are you even replying?" she typed quickly, with trembling fingers. "You don't know me. You shouldn't care. 3 dots. Then, boredom is the only weakness I admit." Ari groaned. This is ridiculous. She wanted to curse, but no sound came out. Instead, she leaned back against the wall, closed her eyes, and let herself imagine for a second that there was someone out there. Someone dangerous, yes, but someone who saw her. Her thumb hovered over the phone again, then she clicked out a message without thinking. "Okay, so are you going to leave me here for the never-ending treatment of a science experiment?" The reply came immediately. "Depends. Are you smart enough to survive it?" Ari's stomach dropped and the amusement faded. That question was a test. And she realized then that every choice she had made in the past 3 years had been preparation for this moment. Every ledger she kept, every note she scribbled secretly about what was real and what Ryo claimed was real, it all mattered now. She forced herself to breathe, hovering her thumb over the phone again, and carefully typed, "Yes, I think so. But I might need instructions." The phone stayed still for longer this time. Longer than Ari liked making her pulse to thud in her throat. She heard a sudden creak behind her and froze, darting her eyes towards the living room. Ryo's shadow moved slowly across the floor, calmly stretching longer than it should have. Her fingers shook over the keyboard. "He's here," she whispered to herself. Then, louder, "Oh, Jesus." 3 dots appeared again, and this time she didn't dare look away from the phone as the message read, "Good, keep your head, don't move. I'm watching." Confused, Ari blinked. Watching? How could he be watching? She was alone, there weren't any cameras, and yet a sliver of comfort crept in. Someone was out there thinking about her, so she felt she wasn't entirely invisible. "Okay," she typed, "I'm keeping my head." Her stomach twisted. She'd never been good at keeping still when panic set in. Every muscle in her body wanted to run, to scream, to make her presence known, but she forced herself to breathe. Every second she stayed still was a second she might survive. Ryo moved closer, humming under his breath. Ari could see the faint glint of his wedding band catching the dim light. That band, instead of being a symbol of love, had always felt like nothing more than a brand. Her thumb hovered again as she typed, "Do you ever get bored with being bored?" A long pause, longer than any she had felt before. Then, "Only when the problem amuses me enough to fix it, and you're mildly amusing." Ari exhaled slowly, as the tension in her shoulders gave a short laugh. She bit her lip, shaking her head. Mildly amusing, she whispered. I'm going to die, and he calls me mildly amusing. Her phone buzzed again, displaying a short and clipped message. Think about moving and stop thinking about me. Ari froze. Moving. She'd been planning this in tiny increments for weeks, keeping notes, ledgers, as well as odd routines, everything that Ryo couldn't trace. And yet the reality of it now, it felt impossible. Her wrist throbbed where the procedure had gone wrong. She wanted to rub it, massage it, make it stop. But she couldn't. She typed back, I can move, but I might scream if I fall. The reply came instantly. Good. Try not to fall. Ari stifled a laugh. This man is ridiculous. And yet, somehow, she believed him. The first step was the kitchen. She moved carefully, silent as a cat, listening to Ryo hum, a tune she didn't recognize as every creak of the floor under her foot felt like a symphony of doom. She made it to the corner of the doorway and peeked around. It was empty. Just the soft, steady hum of him moving somewhere she couldn't see. Her phone buzzed in her hand. You have one shot at the hallway, so don't breathe too loudly, and the front door is obvious, so don't go that way. Ari's heart thudded towards the clear and precise instructions as she typed back. Got it. Hallway it is. She froze, started by a knock at the window. Nothing. Maybe the wind. Maybe a trick of her imagination. Her thumb hovered again. Window okay? 3 dots. Then, leave it. Hallway first. Trust me. Ari blinked, staring at the phone. Trust him. She didn't know him. She didn't know if he could even reach her in time if Ryo noticed she was moving. And yet, the thought of someone deliberately thinking about her safety, bored, annoyed, but thinking about her, made her chest ache in a way she hadn't expected. Ari took a deep breath, gently placing one foot in front of the other as the hallway stretched before her like a minefield. She glanced back at the living room, where Ryo had disappeared, humming quietly to himself. She swallowed hard and carefully moved, deliberating each step against the man who had always made her life feel measured and small. Her phone buzzed one last time as she reached the hallway. You're doing fine, and you're still mildly amusing. Ari couldn't help but let out a short, breathless and shaky laugh. If I survive this, she thought, I'll never forget that someone found me amusing while I was terrified. Ari pressed herself against the wall, holding a phone on one hand while the other hung on a cast, staring down the dim hallway as the thump of her own heartbeat felt deafening in her ears. 3 steps forward, 1 pause, 2 steps forward, and a careful glance behind. Seriously, she whispered, why is he even helping me? I don't even know his name. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. She groaned. Of course he replies immediately. Because, the next message read, I was bored, and you seemed interesting enough to distract me from it. Ari's short laugh vibrated with relief. Interesting, she muttered aloud. I look like a pancake wrapped in a sweater and bruised like a crime scene prop. Her phone buzzed again. You have a point. Slightly more amusing than a pancake, but the bruises help. It makes it cinematic. Ari rolled her eyes. Cinematic? Great. I always wanted to be the star of a low-budget horror comedy. She glanced toward the living room. Ryo was still humming, oblivious to the silent panic spiraling around him. She remembered the way he had controlled her for years, not through blows, but through precision, manipulation, and the slow erosion of her own judgment. Every memory he rewrote felt like a stab she hadn't felt yet. But she wouldn't cry this time. Not now. Not with a stranger watching in his bored, distant way. Her phone buzzed again, practically vibrating against her palm. First lesson in survival. The message read, Stop thinking about him and start thinking about me. Ari snorted. Oh, sure. Focus on the bored stalker instead of the guy who can probably snap my neck without leaving a mark. Perfect plan. She moved a few steps closer to the front door, and the hallway stretched as each shadow looked like it was hiding Ryo's long, quiet limbs. She felt her stomach twist. I should have stayed in bed today, she thought. But no. She'd decided a week ago that the ledgers she'd secretly kept, tracking everything Ryo ever did, were worth more than comfort, and worth maybe even her life. A sharp noise behind her made her freeze as her phone buzzed again. Step aside from the wall, Kwang's message read. The corner is obvious. Ari whispered to herself, of course, obvious corners are for amateurs. She carefully edged away from the wall, as instructed, while her mind raced. Was he really helping? Or was he playing a game? Just then, a soft voice came from the other side of the hallway. Ari? She stiffened. Nay, Mi Young. Her sweet, blunt and slightly clumsy sister, the one person she had allowed a glimpse of herself to exist for. Her sister had always been a problem solver, someone who treated life like a series of spreadsheets to organize, debug and audit. But she wasn't trained for syndicates, and she didn't understand the subtleties of a man like Ryo Youngson. Ari! Mi Young whispered sharply, stepping closer, frowning. What are you doing here? I saw the ambulance lights and I called your doctor. He said, Shh, Ari hissed, waving her hand. Not here. Not now. Mi Young blinked, taking in Ari's bruised wrist and pale face. Holy hell, she muttered. You look... Did someone try to fold you into origami? What the hell happened? Ari forced a laugh, holding up her casted wrist. It's a small medical misunderstanding. Nothing to worry about. I'm fine. Mi Young's eyes narrowed. Fine? You're texting someone who isn't me about being attacked? It turned out to be the wrong number, Ari said quickly, and a very bored guy. Totally harmless. I promise. Mi Young frowned, unconvinced, but she had never been the kind to argue when Ari's instincts kicked in as she then took a cautious step closer. Okay, but you're moving around in heels, like a spy. Are you? She stopped, realizing it was too late to finish the question. Ari gave a dry, humorous smile. I'm improvising. Mi Young rolled her eyes. Improvising. Sure, that's reassuring. The phone buzzed again. Ari checked it and her lips twitched. Step over the rug. It creaks and it's slightly dramatic. Ari whispered. Slightly dramatic? Okay, you're officially insulting me while saving me. Her sister blinked at her. You're talking to who? No one, Ari said. A bored guy who may or may not enjoy my potential death as a hobby. Mi Young's eyebrows shot up. Bored guy? Are you serious? Yes. Ari smiled grimly. Bored enough to give me instructions while my boyfriend walks around like a calm, terrifying ghost. Mi Young didn't reply immediately. She just nodded, scanning her eyes around the hallway. All right, she whispered. I trust your judgment. Just don't die. Ari rolled her eyes again, but the laugh that escaped was more real than it had been in months. Thanks, sis. Real solid advice and very comforting. They moved slowly together, measuring each step as Ari led the way with Kwang's messages guiding her. They reached the hallway near the front door and Ari froze, perceiving the faint smell of Ryo's cologne that hung in the air and was too strong to be casual. She quickly pressed herself into the wall, pulling Mi Young behind her. He's near, she whispered. The phone buzzed. Corner done. Door next. Left side. Ari gritted her teeth. Left side. Got it. This is basically like one of those escape room games, but if we lose, it's real life. Mi Young muttered. I knew it. Escape rooms are safer than your life. Ari let out a soft and nervous laugh. Yeah, I should have just joined an escape room league. They edged toward the door and Ryo's humming finally stopped. Ari's thumb hovered over the phone. Open the door slowly. Like a thief or a ninja, you decide which you feel more like, the message read. Ari whispered, ninja. Definitely ninja. She turned the knob carefully, tensing up and peeked outside, leaving behind an empty hallway. The phone buzzed again. Good. Step outside and keep low. You'll see a taxi that isn't marked. Ari looked at Mi Young, who gave her a shaky nod. Do it. She took a deep breath and whispered, Ready? Mi Young whispered back, Always. And together they stepped into the night. The city was quiet, almost too quiet. Ari's thumb hovered over the phone one last time before the taxi arrived as she typed, I'm outside, but why does the night smell like trouble and maybe hope? 3 dots appeared. You're doing fine. Slightly less amusing than I expected, but still interesting, the reply read. Ari laughed softly to herself, and for the first time in months, she felt alive. She clutched her phone, leaning into the back of the taxi as it hummed silently down empty streets. The city's neon reflected in the rain-slick asphalt, causing a glittering blur that made her head spin, while every shadow looked like Ryo's long legs stretching across alleys, and every splash of water sounded like footsteps. Her sister, Mi Young, sat stiffly beside her, frowning at the window. Do you ever consider that maybe texting a stranger, who might be a criminal mastermind, was a terrible idea? She muttered. Ari didn't answer immediately. Instead, she tapped a message to Kwang. The taxi is still moving, and so far there haven't been any dramatic crashes yet. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Good, keep it that way. Dramatic crashes are highly overrated, so I prefer subtle chaos. Ari snorted quietly, trying not to laugh out loud. Subtle chaos? That is the most boring superhero tagline ever. Mi Young peeked at her phone. Are you enjoying this? Ari grimaced. Not exactly enjoying it. More like surviving with style, and humour is part of the style. The taxi slowed to a stop outside a small and windowless building that looked unmarked, tucked between a noodle shop and a laundromat. The driver gave no glance, following it with a silent nod as he unlocked the doors. Ari's stomach clenched. The place looked normal enough to anyone else, but normal was a trap she'd learned to avoid. A stranger stepped out before the taxi even fully stopped. He was tall, sharp-suited, and exuded a certain type of scary calm. His dark hair was neat, almost boringly perfect. His eyes, however, were sharp, calculating, and Ari couldn't deny it, he looked really intriguing. He raised one eyebrow, glanced at her phone in her hand, and smirked. So this is her? Ari blinked. Her, me? Yes, mildly amusing, slightly terrified, and surprisingly cooperative for a human in mortal danger. He tilted his head, appraising her. I expected screaming and shrieking, at least a dramatic fainting spell. Ari swallowed hard. I don't faint. It's not my style. He smirked again. Good. Fainting makes paperwork messy. You can call me Kwang. Mi Young tugged on Ari's sleeve. I didn't know we were auditioning for your board amusement, sir. Kwang's gaze shifted to Mi Young. You're the sister. I didn't know anyone else was involved. That's a complication. His smirk softened into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Complications are interesting. Ari felt her pulse spike. The calm, bored tone he used made him almost dangerous in a different way than Ryo. Ryo had controlled her with fear and manipulation. Kwang controlled with calm, amused intent, and she had no idea what his intent actually was. Okay, Ari said with a slightly trembling voice. So, what now? Do we go inside? Do we fight crime? Do I? She stopped, realizing she sounded like a teenager in a video game cutscene. Kwang glanced at her with an unreadable expression. No, not yet. First, we make sure you're safe, and you follow instructions. Ari stared at him. Instructions? From the bored guy who replied to my text? Exactly. The one who is far more competent than you realize. Ari blinked and her stomach twisted. Competent? Maybe. Dangerous? Definitely. Amusing? Too much so for comfort. Mi Young leaned over, whispering, Are we seriously trusting this guy? Ari looked at her sister and shrugged. He hasn't killed us yet. That's a good start. Kwang noticed the whispering. She says you're trustworthy, Ari added quickly. In a sibling sort of way. She mostly just wants me to survive. Survival is my favorite game, Kwang said. Next to boredom. Ari groaned softly. Is this guy ever serious? Kwang gestured toward the building. Let's go in. The interior was stark, sterile even with white walls, black tiles, and a single desk with a monitor glowing softly while Ari's legs became as stiff as iron. You? Sit, Kwang said. And you don't move unless I say. And you, he pointed at Mi Young, you mostly just stay alive and observe. You can also sparingly comment since opinions are optional. Mi Young rolled her eyes. Optional, he says. Yeah, that's reassuring. Ari's fingers hovered over her phone as she typed quickly. You know, you're really making me question all my life choices. Also, what is this place? A safe house? A trap? A bored spy lair? 3 dots appeared immediately. None of the above, but it's a very neutral place, somewhere between safety and boredom. It's functional and I like neutral functions. Ari coughed out a short laugh. Neutral functional. Right? That's exactly how I describe my last 3 years of life under Ryo. Kwang's gaze sharpened. Ah, so you know control. That will help you understand instructions faster. Ari swallowed hard. Do you know him? Kwang's expression didn't change. Know him? Let's say he was an old employer, but he's not exactly among the fondest memories. Her stomach dropped. Ryo was his boss? Wait, old boss? That explains a lot. Yes, Kwang said flatly. He kicked me out claiming I was weak and I disagreed. Although it's irrelevant now, you, however, are relevant. Ari blinked, trying to process. So you're helping me because boredom or revenge or what exactly? He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, twinkling his eyes with faint amusement. Boredom, slight curiosity, and maybe you look like you have enough fire to survive a few disasters. Mi Young muttered, boredom as a motive, right? That is totally reassuring. Ari laughed quietly. I swear, if I survive this, I'm writing a book called How a Bored Mafia Boss Saved Me and Made Me Laugh. Kwang raised an eyebrow. I would read that. The laugh died in Ari's throat as reality hit her again. Ryo could still be coming. The man she had lived with, learned from, and feared was out there somewhere, and Kwang had only just met her. Her phone buzzed, displaying a new message from Kwang. Rule 1, don't assume anything. Rule 2, survive. Rule 3, if the opportunity arises, run fast. And 4, humor is optional but appreciated. Ari groaned. Optional? You've been killing me with optional humor since day one. Mi-young elbowed her. You know, I think he's enjoying this too much. The bored thing. It's really terrifying. Ari nodded. Yeah, but at least someone is paying attention. At least someone sees me. Kwang, standing behind the desk now, finally spoke more softly, as the smirk on his face faded into something harder to read. Seeing you survive, that's more than most deserve. But this isn't a charity case, and I need you to understand. Your survival depends on obedience and cleverness. Not charm, not luck. Cleverness. Ari's chest tightened. Cleverness? Yeah, I can do that, I think. Kwang's measuring gaze lingered on her. Good, then maybe this won't be boring after all. Ari let herself relax a fraction. She couldn't shake the tension completely. Danger hadn't left, and Ryo was still out there, but for the first time she felt like she had a tiny lifeline. Not just anyone, but someone dangerous enough to make her survival possible and, somehow, weirdly amusing. Also, Ari said quietly, tugging a smirk at her lips, I may or may not have a habit of talking too much when I'm terrified. Kwang's lips twitched. Noted. Considered dangerous, but amusing. You might survive yet. Mi-young groaned softly. Why do I feel like we just entered the most chaotic board game ever designed? Ari laughed. Because we have, and if we win, I'll buy the drinks. But if we lose, well, you'll be the first to know. Kwang's phone buzzed and he glanced at it, raising an eyebrow. Ah, a complication. Exactly the kind I was hoping for. Ari stiffened. Complication? What kind of? Kwang cut her off with an unreadable expression. Appetently, Ryo is searching for you. It was faster than expected, but that's all you need to know for now. Just stay clever, and mildly amusing if possible. Ari swallowed hard. Mildly amusing. Check. Clever. Working on it. The three of them exchanged a glance, Ari, Mi-young, and Kwang, each silently acknowledging that the next steps would be dangerous. And yet, for the first time since the text started, Ari felt a spark of hope. A spark she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Ari's fingers hovered over her phone, though Kwang had made it clear she wasn't to use it unless he instructed. The hum of the air conditioner in the safe house felt louder than it should, but she couldn't help herself since her mind continued to race, looping over every possible escape, every possible disaster, and the one terrifying man who could save her or let her fall. Kwang leaned against the desk, crossing his arms, scanning the street through the small tinted window. Your expression says panic and it's oddly charming, he said. Ari blinked. Charm isn't exactly the word I'd use for panic, maybe terrified and barely holding it together while at the same time questioning all life choices, he smirked. Less charming and more deliciously human. That works too. Mi-young groaned. Deliciously human? Really? That's your reassurance, Ari. Ari quietly laughed despite herself. At least he hasn't killed us yet. Yet, Kwang added, with glinting eyes. Her stomach twisted. Funny, yes, but every joke carried a reminder. Ryo Yongsun was still out there. Her phone buzzed and she peeked at it, seeing a text from an unknown number. Run now, or he might find you first. Ari's eyes widened. That's helpful? Kwang glanced at the screen. Helpful is relative, but it's accurate because timing is everything. Mi-young raised an eyebrow. Timing? You mean escape? Precisely, Kwang said, pulling on his gloves. And I like precision. Ari groaned. I really hate that word. Precise. It's the word of someone who's about to kill me or save me, or both. Kwang let out a soft laugh. Yes, and that's why it's fun. The taxi ride to the extraction point was tense but quiet, and Ari kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting Ryo to leap out from the shadows with a grin and a broken bone ready. Instead, the streets were empty. The neon signs continued to flicker, and Kwang hummed something low under his breath. So, Ari said, leaning forward slightly, do you often rescue bored girls in danger while commenting on their expressions? Only when they're amusing, Kwang replied without missing a beat. And you are. Ari snorted. Amusing, right. Glad to be appreciated. Not sure my ass-kicking skills are what you're into, though. Kwang smirked. You might be surprised. Mi Young elbowed her. Can we focus on not dying instead of flirting with death? Flirting with death, Ari muttered, is basically how I've been surviving for 3 years. This is a bit familiar. The building they arrived at was one of Kwang's cure hideouts, a nondescript and industrial warehouse that forgot it was supposed to be threatening. Inside, Ari immediately noticed the guns, the reinforced doors, and the single large monitor displaying maps of the city and moving dots. Okay, Kwang broke the growing silence. You see these dots? Those are all variables. Ryo is here, and, oh yes, definitely here, and moving faster than I anticipated. Ari's stomach sank. You're tracking him? That's impressive and terrifying. Mostly terrifying for him, Kwang replied with a smirk. For you, it's slightly amusing with a chance of survival. Mi Young muttered. Slightly amusing? How is anything slightly amusing right now? Perspective, Kwang said. Also, humor improves reflexes and morale. Survival points are a thing, trust me. Ari whispered under her breath. Morale points, sure, but I've got 0. Kwang caught the words. 0 is fine. We'll just have to make small gains. Ari was startled by the efficiency. As every door unlocked without a sound, every camera bypassed without a beep, while Kwang's silent and professional men flanked them as if Ari were already a VIP of some secret operation. So, we just stroll in, grab Ryo, and call it a day? Ari asked, using a trembling voice. Because that's how movies do it. I know, I've watched enough. Kwang's eyebrow rose. You think this is a movie? Ari shrugged. I was hoping it was a comedy. Dark comedy. Maybe with witty dialogue. It is, Kwang said, lowering his voice. And you're starring. They reached the warehouse where Ryo was expected. The tension in the air was palpable, and Ari's pulse continued to race. Kwang gestured, whispering instructions. Ari's part was to blend in, avoid panicking, and stay sharp. Mi Young's part was to keep an eye on exits. Kwang's part entailed everything else. The door swung open, and there he was. Ryo Yongson, tall, cold, with that faint smile Ari had always hated. Wow, he said, dripping his voice with patronizing amusement. If it isn't the runaway accountant. Ari felt bile rise. Runaway, I'm strategically relocated, she corrected sharply. Ryo's gaze flicked to Kwang and the recognition hit him. Kwang, didn't expect to see you playing hero. Or villain? Kwang stepped forward, almost casually relaxing his hands. It depends. Are you about to hurt anyone? Ryo smirked. It's funny how you think you can lecture me, because obviously you're still too weak and still predictable. Predictability is a dangerous assumption, Kwang said, especially when someone learns how to play the game your way, and your rules are obsolete. Ari's throat tightened. She wanted to run, scream, hide, and somehow impress Kwang all at once. Go, Kwang said sharply, and immediately 2 of his men flanked Ryo, closing the space. Now. Ryo laughed, but it was tight, forced. You think a couple of goons and a bored Mafia boss can stop me? I trained you, Kwang. You're not as sharp as you think. Kwang tilted his head, smirked lightly, and said, but I'm sharper than you remember. And she's excellent practice. His gaze flicked to Ari. Go. Ari didn't hesitate. Instinct, fear, and adrenaline propelled her forward, and she grabbed Ryo's arm, twisted slightly, and shoved him toward the waiting men. The man she'd feared for years stumbled, cursing, and for a moment Ari saw something she hadn't before. Ryo looked flawed, human, and surprisingly fallible. Mi Young whispered urgently, That was impressive. Did you know you had it in you? Ari panted, trying to ignore the fact she had, in fact, just body-slammed a syndicate courier. Not really, but Kwang, let's just say his boredom training is excellent. Ryo was restrained, fuming, glaring at Ari and Kwang both. This isn't over, he hissed. Kwang leaned close, lowering his voice with a deadly calm. Oh, it's over for now. And next time, try not to underestimate bored people, especially the ones who notice details. Ari caught her breath with a hammering heart. Notice details, right, got it. Note to self, bored Mafia bosses equals dangerous, also slightly hilarious. Mi Young rolled her eyes. Slightly hilarious? You are insane. Ari smiled shakily. Maybe, but I'm still alive, and that's new. Kwang's gaze lingered on her. Alive, clever, and amusing. Keep that combination. You might just survive this world, and maybe annoy me enough to be interesting. Ari finally let out a soft laugh that wasn't filled with panic, and Kwang smirked. Ryo's curses filled the background, but Ari barely heard them. He struggled against the rope, growling. You think you've won? You, Kwang, you weak little... Careful, Kwang, calm as ever, interrupted. I might get bored again, and boredom can be dangerous. He gave Ari a sideways glance. You'd like him to know exactly how boring it can be, right? Ari raised an eyebrow, smirking despite herself. I think I prefer dangerous boredom over being crushed by him for 3 years. Mi-young whispered from behind a crate, rolling her eyes. You two are insane. Can we, I don't know, leave before he actually breaks something or someone? Ryo spat, glaring at her. This isn't over. You hear me? I built him. Kwang, I trained you. And now you betray me for... Kwang's smirk didn't falter. I was weak when you kicked me out, but bored people learn fast. His eyes locked on Ari, and some of us learn for someone worth saving. Ari's stomach did a weird flip. Worth saving. That wasn't a phrase she'd heard, not from anyone, and she didn't trust herself not to blush. Flattery will not save you, Ari, Mi-young muttered, nudging her. Focus. You're right, Ari said, shaking her head and rolling her shoulders. Focus. Live. And maybe annoy Kwang just enough to keep him amused. Ryo let out a harsh and metallic laugh. Amused? You think this is a game? You think anyone survives this? Except me, Kwang interrupted, stepping closer. And that's because we don't play the games you think we're playing. Ryo's face faltered and Ari noticed it, a flicker of doubt, maybe fear. The same man who had seemed untouchable just a few days ago. You always thought rules made you safe, Kwang said, pacing slowly around him. But rules are for the bored and for the careful. You were careless, so you underestimated boredom. Ryo's jaw tightened. You think a bored man and a very witty, sarcastic woman can't stop you? Ari finished, surprising herself with the sharpness in her voice. Ryo blinked. You are ridiculous. Exactly, Ari said, grinning despite the adrenaline. Ridiculousness is survival now, and I'm very good at it. Kwang's lips twitched, almost curling into a smile. I think she's right. You're learning things too late. Ari's phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. She pulled it out and frowned. It was a text from Ryo's old contacts. Where is he? Mi-young groaned. Oh, fantastic. The whole city is texting now. Perfect. Kwang's expression darkened. They don't get to decide anything. Not tonight. He reached for a small device, and with a few presses, all external communications went dark. Ryo's eyes widened. You? How? Shh, Kwang said, stepping close so only Ryo could hear. I'm bored, and bored people do dangerous things. Remember that. Ari watched with a pounding heart, realizing Kwang was a force of chaos disguised as control. And she didn't mind, not entirely. Mi-young tugged at her sleeve. We should go, before he recalculates and decides boredom is over. Ari nodded, though she stole one more glance at Kwang. Yeah, let's go. As they left the warehouse, Ryo's curses fading behind them, Ari felt a strange rush of something. Safety? Maybe. Relief? Definitely. And amusement. That odd spark Kwang always carried, the one that made her laugh even while terrified. Outside, under the streetlights, Ari turned to Kwang. You didn't have to help me. You could have stayed bored and ignored me. He shrugged, placing both hands in his pockets. Boredom gets lonely, but watching you flail helplessly, well, let's say I prefer to be entertained and useful at the same time. Ari blinked. Entertained and useful? That's surprisingly flattering and slightly terrifying. Good, Kwang said, tilting his head. I like a mix. Keeps things interesting. Ari laughed softly. Interesting. I can do something interesting, I think. Mi-young groaned again. Oh, for heaven's sake, can we walk before the entire syndicate decides boredom isn't funny anymore? They moved down the street, and for the first time in years she felt human. Vulnerable, yes, but also seen. Kwang walked beside her, not too close, not too far. His gaze was unreadable, but there was a weight of respect and curiosity in it now, with something more dangerous. Interest. Ari nudged him lightly. So, boredom saved me, and maybe your terrible sense of humor. He smirked, and maybe yours too. Ari felt her cheeks heat. Mine? Don't flatter me. It'll ruin my street cred. You've never had street cred, Kwang said dryly, but you're learning, and I admit it, you make boredom less boring.